This month, we got Nintendo's Big Summer Direct. It very well could have been the last Direct of the generation, and I think it definitely went out with a bang. In my last video, I talked about how my expectation was that this Direct would be fairly underwhelming, but rumors came out after I recorded it that raised my expectations a bit, and it ended up being one of the most memorable Directs ever. I don't want to give the Direct like a complete in-depth review or really talk about every headline, so I'm just going to quickly talk about the big titles we got as well as what we didn't get. As far as what wasn't in the Direct, the biggest thing I wanted to touch on was the absence of Fire Emblem. In my predictions video, I put Fire Emblem in the definitely not tier, mostly because I just felt like it was too soon for another entry with Engage launching early last year, even if the next installment is a remake. A lot of people in the comments disagreed, with some making points that kind of pushed me towards it maybe happening, but we didn't end up getting it. One of the main points people brought up was the genealogy of the Holy War remake that's been rumored since as early as 2021. When Engage leaked in 2022, the same leaker also came forward confirming the remake's existence. When Engage launched, the codename was datamined, revealing that there was a gap in between the numbering of 3 houses in Engage, further cementing that there was another Fire Emblem being held off for whatever reason. We've seen instances in the past where Nintendo has held off games in order to create a stronger and steady pipeline of launches, so they may just see this game as a title they can release whenever they need something to fill in the gaps, or when it just becomes time for a new Fire Emblem. My current personal prediction is that this remake will be announced and released within the first year of the Switch 2, so we still have a bit of time before we get there. In the Direct, we got 5 major reveals, the first one being Mario and Luigi Brothership. Sadly, I wasn't able to watch the Direct live and I got spoiled on this announcement, which is kind of a bummer. Honestly, I'm a little shocked we got another Mario and Luigi game. With Alpha Dream closed down and them releasing a ton of other Mario RPGs, I figured there wouldn't be another entry anytime soon, if at all. Obviously, I was wrong and the game itself looks really great. The art style used in the promotional art also looks really good in 3D, so hats off to the dev team. Admittedly, I haven't played any of the Mario and Luigi games to completion, but I feel like this new entry being on a home console means we could get a single Joy-Con multiplayer option, similar to Pokemon Let's Go. Next up, we're getting our first new Mario Party game since 2018's Super Mario Party, which even carries the same super title as that one. I know we have Mario Party Superstars from 2021, but I don't know if I necessarily consider that a new game, just because it's all remade content. At this point, I think they've learned their lesson from players being dissatisfied with 9, 10, and Super and the approval of Superstars because wow, this game looks like it has it all. Bigger boards with unique gimmicks, mini games that utilize buttons and motion control, and even some side modes. My favorite Mario Party is 8, and this trailer kinda gives me Mario Party 8 vibes, so I'm excited. Going back to the points I made last time thinking that this could be a larger scale Mario Party game, one of the side modes can be played with 20 players, though that seems to be an online only mode. There was another mode teased, so there could still be a banquet styled mode. Now, if you watched my predictions video, you know that Donkey Kong Country Returns was something I believed was possible due to Donkey Kong's new relevance from Super Nintendo World and the Mario movie. One of my main points is that this would be an easy way to put more Donkey Kong on Switch without committing to developing a new game. I even doubled down on this in my narrower predictions, which were mostly wrong, but that's besides the point. Considering my top-down Zelda prediction was tainted by a rumor that came out shortly after I recorded the video, I'm going to cling to this victory as much as I can. This was a very smart move on Nintendo's part as it allows them to build the Donkey Kong IP on Switch in anticipation of a new game in the future. At this point, you can play all 5 country games on Switch. As the Switch library gets bigger with the 2nd generation, I think we'll be able to say this for many other series as well, which is really cool. For the first time in over a decade, we're finally seeing a new top-down Zelda game, and for the first time in the series, Zelda is not only playable, but the main character. Like I mentioned earlier, there were some rumors and reports of this game floating around before the Direct, so that kind of dampened my excitement for the reveal. However, the game itself looks really fun. Something to note is that this game also uses the same engine and art style as Link's Awakening. We kind of expected this to happen, but if you look at the bigger picture, it sets a really good precedent. Nintendo is no stranger to reusing resources and assets to release multiple games. There are tons of examples we could pull from, but this one sticks out to me because the art style is so specific. Going forward, if there's ever a remaster for a game, we should consider how Nintendo is going to double dip to get the most out of those assets. There are tons of games that could be completely remade and get a follow-up installment right after to get a bigger return on investment. I could use this moment to talk about a Kid Icarus Uprising remaster, but there is a bigger game on everyone's mind we need to talk about. For the moment we've all been waiting for, after a 7-year wait, we finally have a teaser for Prime 4, and it looks really good. Probably the best looking Switch game. While we didn't get a full-blown reveal, we did get a launch window of 2025, which was always a possibility considering this is the first time we've seen the game. We're gonna have to wait a little longer before we live in a post-Prime 4 launch world, but thankfully we have a lot of games to hold us over. One thing I am surprised about is how we didn't see anything on a Prime 2 release. After the teaser, I was expecting there to be one last screen announcing it, but there wasn't anything. Though, now that we know Prime 4 is still a ways away, probably around 9 months I'm assuming, it's still possible we might get 2 and 3 shadow dropped at a later date. With these 5 reveals, what exactly is going to happen next? The pipeline is definitely more filled than I thought it would be at this point. It's such a culture shock compared to the transition from the Wii U, since most of what we got then seemed like very bottom of the barrel games compared to the lineup in this direct. Personally, what I get from this is that the new console release is not going to affect Nintendo's output. The train is just going to keep on chugging, and when the next console releases, we may get a few bigger games, but it's going to feel like not much has changed. The wind down I initially thought was going to be there doesn't seem like it's going to happen. We are still a little bit in the dark of what the first quarter of 2025 will look like, with the only first party games scheduled so far being Donkey Kong, with Legend ZA and Prime 4 launching sometime within the year. This begs the question, will there be a September Direct, or will the Switch 2 launch early enough in the year that Donkey Kong will be enough to prevent the feeling of a drought? If we assume the Switch 2 follows the same timeline the first Switch had, that leaves us with a reveal in October, a major presentation in January, and a launch in March. If we fill in the schedule with what we know is releasing, before the year is over, we have 3 major titles launching in the last third of the year and Returns HD in January. If the Switch 2 releases in March, I think it's safe to assume we'll get at least one major launch title like we did for the Switch. Our options here are Pokemon, Metroid, or some unannounced game, and I think there's a strong case for any of them. Pokemon is such a huge deal obviously, and while there's never been a mainline game as a system launch title, I don't see why they couldn't do it for the first time. Prime 4 is essentially the Breath of the Wild of this generation, being a game that got announced way earlier than its release and still not much information several years in. This game is the biggest hype generator Nintendo has right now, so they'll definitely be able to use that to their advantage. As for the unannounced game, I'm fairly confident this would be a new 3D Mario game, as we haven't gotten a full new one since 2017, making this the longest wait for a new open environment 3D game by a year. You could make the argument that it would be too soon after Wonder, but back on the Wii, Galaxy 2 released 1 year after New Soup, so I think that's a non-issue. Right now, I think it's a bit too early to pinpoint which it'll be, but I feel like we'll have a much better idea after we get more information on Legend ZA. Thankfully, Game Freak and the Pokemon Company do it presents every summer, so we'll probably get more clarity in the coming months. Going back to release scheduling, I'm not really sure we'll get a September Nintendo Direct. We could get one early in the month with a second trailer for Zelda and Mario and Luigi, but those, along with any other potential updates, could just be social media announcements. The only purpose a Direct would serve would to be shining a light on the 2025 lineup, most of which are being held off for the Switch 2, which I don't think they'll talk about ahead of its reveal. In place of a September Direct, I think we'll just get a soft reveal of the Switch 2 with sneak peeks at some of the games that were released throughout the year, kind of like what we got for the Switch. That being said, most of what I have to say about the next year is purely speculation, but I hope you enjoyed hearing me out, and fingers crossed for all of our sakes that we see something on the Switch 2 by the end of the year. I hope everyone got something they wanted in this Direct, and if you didn't, there's like 3 of these things a year, so I'm manifesting your game for the next one. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next video.